You can understand a show better as you grow older. When a show comes out initially, there will be a number of people that may not understand the story it's trying to portray, or do not relate to it. However, after a few years since its release, you've experienced a lot more in life. So after hearing so much positive comments about it, you finally decide to revisit the show. That time you had to grow gave you that opportunity to really understand what they tried to portray. I will admit that when Bojack Horseman came out, it really did not interest me whatsoever. There were two main reasons why. The first is because I was not a huge fan of the art style originally. The second is that it came out a few months after I graduated high school. The stiffness of the animation and not having that relatability made me want to skip the show. As many of the positives that I have heard about the show from my peers at the time, I didn't really feel it was the right time for me to give the show a fair chance. So after nearly a decade since its debut, I finally decided to take a look back at the first season of Bojack Horseman. As I stated prior in the video, I wasn't a big fan of the art style when it originally came out. My biggest issue with it back in the day was that it felt incredibly stiff. There was very little movement with the characters, and there were very few times where the animation went off model as the episode went on. However, as I watched the first season, the style did grow on me as the season went on. I think what really helped out with that was how amazingly written the characters are, as it helped me not notice the style too much. I do think the texture of the style was certainly more unique for the anthropomorphic characters. It's very rare to see the splatter-like designs for the various furs within each character. It's interesting because we've seen a pattern-like design from various backgrounds like in the Looney Tunes show, or for various sheets of clothing like in Chowder. However, this is the first time seeing it on the actual characters themselves. It's a very odd but unique choice. It's definitely one that can be considered to be outside of the box compared to other shows in general, let alone adult-related cartoons. The designs of the world aren't necessarily stunning, but it does make certain characters more noticeable with the animation design. Even with all of that, I still consider the animation to be a mixed bag. Going from the weakest attribute of the show to one that supports the strongest attribute with the show, the characters. So when talking about the characters and how they mesh well with each other throughout the season, it's really important to recognize how well each character complements one another. There are quite a good amount of personalities within the show that don't fight each other for screen time. Each character always felt they were used at the right place at the right time. Though, there are a few things that may seem unnecessary and were placed to get some sort of cheap laugh. But that's only one small issue in a myriad of positives when it comes to the characters.
Man, I really regret buying those muffins and then eating them all on the drive home.
So why not start things off with the main horse of the show, Bojack Horseman. Bojack is a horse in his 50s that has struggled after his hit show Horsin' Around reached its conclusion. Bojack has a myriad of flaws and complications that any celebrity has when they fall from grace. I think what's interesting about him is the ways of trying to cope with his current status and popularity by being in the toilet for quite a while. In all honesty, it's clear that this is a story of a fallen villain. I know that this is a weird statement for a main character, But the biggest reason for why I think this way is because he is facing repercussions from how he carries himself, both in the present and in the past. We've seen major characters that are not the nicest throughout all of animation. However, the difference with Bojack is that the punishment he receives has a long-term effect. Whether it's him not being there for those who have helped him make it to the big leagues, be willing to sabotage others' opportunities so that that person stays reliant upon him, or wanting to gaslight people to do what he wants, all those lead to negative repercussions. So while he can easily be seen as a villainous individual, karma bites him in the butt, and we see how it continues to drain him both physically and emotionally to the point where we can feel sympathy for him. That's what made this character incredibly intriguing as his story was being told. It's very rare that we see a type of Macbeth character, a protagonist that gets what he deserves. However, they set Bojack up to where we want to root for him to get out of this cycle he puts himself in. This is a once-in-a-lifetime character because he is an asshole main protagonist that actually reaps what he sows.
I wasn't driving around, was I?
No, you made Todd your designated driver, but then you also made him drink with you.
Yeah, I'll have a Western bacon cheeseburger.
So Todd is essentially the freeloading best friend. A guy that was kicked out of his parents' house and was able to talk to Bojack into letting him stay at the horse's stable. He's not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, but the one thing you can count on is that he is a very loyal individual. He wants to see the brighter side of things and show support to his friends, especially when it comes to Bojack. Though he's not the happy-go-lucky sidekick either that I paint him out to be, and he can be more aware of how people can take advantage of him. He's also someone that is incredibly relatable because he doesn't think too highly of himself, not really believing that he is more than what he is when it comes to his dreams and aspirations. He never had anyone to really support him and even dismiss his dreams. Not to mention how he easily gets rolled over by those who are more assertive, and his people-pleasing ends up biting him in the butt. I definitely consider Todd a favorite of mine because I relate to so much to wanting to be there for others while not having the confidence to pursue what he really wants. Plus, even though his agency is small to non-existent, he will be willing to use it and tell it like it is.
I don't think these offshore banks we've been using are 100% legal.
Yeah, well, my mother told me never to slap an idiot.
What? Ow!
Now we're both breaking the rules.
Princess Carolyn is the ex-girlfriend and current agent of Bojack Horseman. She is a woman who thrives on being a go-getter. While she has been royally screwed over by Bojack on many occasions, she still tries her best to help him out because she still cares about him quite a lot. I mean, she has shown to be quite successful as an agent from her discussions with other clients, which means that she can easily do without Bojack, especially since he wronged her on multiple occasions. She's very intelligent and knows how to outsmart her rivals on a consistent basis. She can be very cutthroat towards her clients and the people she cares about. While she does take her job very seriously, she also aspires to have a family of her own. Plus, her and Bojack basically grew their careers together, so she has a lot to thank for when it comes to her career being a success now, which means she also has that sense of loyalty and sees him as more than just the shell of himself. She wants to be emotionally open and find that opportunity to find true happiness in her own life.
Well, they do have Baileys in them.
Is that why I feel drunk?
I mean, I admit it's been bad for ideas, but it's been great for camaraderie.
Couldn't agree more.
Now we're going to talk about the good boy who is seen as the rival of Bojack. Mr. Peanutbutter had a similar career path as Bojack, as he ran the sitcom scene during the late 90s with his own show, Peanutbutter's House. Obviously, Bojack sees him as the guy that has ripped off his show and doesn't think too highly of him. Although I can understand the animosity towards him, he does give off the silly dumb dog stereotype. He's incredibly loyal and is very friendly to just about anyone. However, he does become very territorial when it comes to the people he wants in his life, and is willing to take advantage of others to get ahead. He is certainly someone you can consider to be a two-faced celebrity, and I think that he and Bojack are a lot similar than either would like to admit. They want the public's attention and will step over anyone to get it. The difference is that Mr. Peanutbutter is really good at that.
Hey, Honeysuckle, great news. I got to ride in a police car. Bad news, I lost my driver's license.
Let me guess, were you chasing the mailman again?
And finally, we have the woman who is seen as the prize Bojack wants but cannot have. That's mainly because of the relationship between Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter, which certainly fueled the rivalry between the two. Though Diane is certainly a very important piece to Bojack's life, and the same can be said vice versa. See, Diane is also very intelligent as a ghostwriter, essentially being the person who discusses with the individual and forms their vision into pen and paper. Their bond became strong throughout the season because Bojack also saw some of Diane's scars as well. I do believe they see eye to eye when it comes to family trauma, but she desperately wants to escape that reality. That's my belief as to why she decided to have a relationship with Mr. Peanutbutter in the first place, as he has a much more positive outlook on life, at least on paper. I think she knows that relatability and understanding is much more important to have with a person than to find someone that seems perfect in every way. So while she wants this facade relationship to work, I'm not sure if this will work out. Now it's time to talk about what really drives the show as a whole in its first season. The thing I'd love to highlight is the amount of subtle seed planting that occurred throughout it. The actions that have happened in a previous episode do come back in some sort of fashion that impacts the main plot in a major way. Whether it be in the same episode or it'll be saved until much later in the season. A great example of that would have to be when Bojack had an interaction with a seal at a store and squandered over a box of muffins, where it turned out it was a military vet that brought the media involved to picture Bojack as a celebrity that's against the troops, which wasn't what it was about at all. Even then, it still blew way out of proportion, but then it was completely forgotten about because of Mr. Peanutbutter's antics. I think this situation really plays out how a lot of scenarios are handled within the season. A situation that gets blown way out of proportion only for a solution to occur that only a handful of people are able to be satisfied with, and a sprinkle of seeds planted that will affect the overall plot of the season. The dialogue used within the show is fantastic, with both the timing and execution always being on point. Even some of the subtle visual jokes were very impactful as well to increase the hilarity of the scene. Even some of the cutaway gags were not distracting and even help improve the comedy that further continues the story, rather than disrupting it. It's a story that really helps humanize a lot of disgruntled individuals in the hard world of Hollywood. It helps us see the everyday life of someone who fell from grace and how easily society can destroy you physically and mentally, driving into doing something that you could never reverse.
Show you. You can be the fastest runner in the world, but you can't outrun the truth.
This show gives a strong sentiment of really going through the emotional struggles of life. It proves that having everything you've ever wanted in life doesn't always lead to true happiness. While I didn't have the full interest in the show in its initial run, I can say that giving this show where I am at now gives me a new appreciation to what story it is trying to tell overall. My feelings of the animation style are somewhat the same, but the story and characters increased the amount of interest I have with the show and really kept it going with every second. It gives us the glimpse of what it is really like being at the top and the scars that can come from being there, and how quickly it can affect relationships. It's a thing to pay attention to when you climb the ladder of popularity, and how you need to be really careful with who you align with as you grow, and remember those that were there for you since day one. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.